Got a number of items to share with you today. Let's start with effects bargaining. We had a presentation to our Democratic Party the other evening in which the issue was, would the Democratic Party support the council, the county executive, and the police chief on making this on the sample ballot in support of the council's action? And there were those, quite frankly, that were skeptical as to whether or not the Democratic Party would do so because of the traditional support for union sets of issues. It's a hard thing for core Democrats, and this is the core of the core. And I was pleased that after the presentation of myself, council members Leventhal, Elrich, and I believe Andrews, plus the county executive, that we succeeded with an overwhelming vote, 90+% support the council's unanimous position that we need to get rid of effects bargaining. It's something that simply has not worked, that no other police union in the state of Maryland has, no other county union in Montgomery County has, and our police chief has said it has tied his hands in ways that make it so very difficult for him to manage. So it was very important that we be on the sample ballot, that our Democratic Party support our Democratic members of the county council and our Democratic county executive, and they did so overwhelmingly, notwithstanding the presentation of the FOP's representative and of McGeo's representative. I can never meet with you guys without at least having some conversation about Pepco. Today we have a meeting at the Public Service Commission on what's called the billing adjustment. What is it? Stabilization. Thank you. Even I'm a utility lawyer and I forget that phrase. Billing stabilization adjustment. It is the procedure whereby Pepco and other utilities in the state are allowed to recover 24 hours worth of billings even when people are without power during a storm. And the commission has come under a great deal of criticism for allowing that. I have argued in the past that the commission should get rid of this, and quite frankly, I'm confident that they will. I haven't had any direct conversations with the commission, but I believe that they will follow the lead of the District of Columbia, which does not allow this. So it's certainly my hope and my expectation that they will conform their practices to the District of Columbia and not allow Pepco to recover dollars from ratepayers when power is not being delivered. We have not one, not two, not three. We've got 4 little transportation items that I'll share with you today. The first is the reason why we're having the press conference a little earlier today is because I will be joining Senators Mikulski, Cardin, and Congressman Van Hollen in receiving a check of $40 million to our county to assist in the undergrounding tunnel that will go from the NIH side to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. And this is a critical piece of what we need to do for our community to absorb the increase in traffic that will be generated by this fabulous facility. And it is a long-range issue that allows us to have more transit and to encourage people to use more transit, because currently it's just a little too hard and a little too inconvenient for people to get from one side of Wisconsin to the other side at that particular place. And this tunnel is it's a good thing, something that I fought very hard for, and pleased that I'll be there to receive the check. It's a down payment. It's a project that I believe is about $87 million. So this is the first big chunk of change that we will get for this long-term improvement in our county's mobility at that particular place. I've shared with you recently our efforts with respect to working with Fairfax County, something that our county had never done before. It was something that surprised me, quite frankly, that notwithstanding our competitiveness, we do share an issue called congestion, particularly as it relates to the American Legion Bridge. And so I felt it was very important for our two councils to get together, and we did so about 6 weeks or so ago, maybe even longer, I apologize. But the outcome of that meeting was our agreement that we would ask our two states to look at this issue and look at whether or not we can use existing capacity on the shoulders for moving more people through this choke point. And by the end of this year, the Virginia side is going to be complete with its HOT lanes. And what it means is that we're going to have a 7-mile stretch of interstate that is going to be a choke point. And so this effort is designed to see if we can come up with an interim solution. It isn't a perfect solution, but it is one that has been used on I-95. It is one that has been used on I-66 before, in which we use the shoulder to hopefully move more people. So I am hopeful that our state leaders will see that if Montgomery County and Fairfax, fierce competitors, can come together on this kind of effort, that our two states can follow our lead in this regard. We're also looking at 270, and our council will be sending a letter with the county executive to our state to say, look, we've got HOV lanes from 270 at the 370 intersection down to the Beltway. We need HOV lanes from the 370 intersection going up to Clarksburg. So please consider repurposing the center line, the center lane closest to the medium, for an HOV lane. So we will be sending a letter shortly. That was the outcome of a Transportation Committee meeting that we held the other day, to see if we can finally make some progress in 270, because 270, everybody appreciates, it's a nightmare. It's an embarrassment. It's something that has to change, and we're working to see if we can make some progress in that regard as well. We had a good meeting with our Maryland Association of County leadership last week, in which transportation was an issue as well. We desperately need transportation funding in our state, and we need to explore all options in that regard. And if the state is unwilling to step up and provide this funding, we really need to understand its consequences for our state, because so much of our transit-oriented development, not only in Montgomery County, but in Prince George's County and Baltimore, is dependent upon transit. My colleague, Councilmember Leventhal, likes to say, if you're having TOD and no T, there's no D. I think it's a pretty catchy and good phrase. It sort of captures this is what is necessary. It's the predicate for our being able to move forward in economic development and quality of life sets of issues. So we want to make sure that the state fully appreciates its significance, and that if they're unable to, and I understand that Garrett County looks at Montgomery County and says, really, our needs aren't the same, then we're going to have to figure out some way in which local counties, local communities can move forward without the state, because we simply no is not an answer. We have to get to yes, and we have to get to yes somehow, some way, if we are going to have the kind of vibrant community that we all desire, one that addresses our quality of life issues and our economic development sets of issues. I didn't talk to you last week because we had a holiday, but the bond rating trip I thought went very well. I was with the county executive in New York City, meeting with all three rating agencies, and I won't say the particular rating agency because I don't think it's fair, but we sat in one of our meetings in which at the end of our presentation, the rating agency just looked at us and said, "You are so solidly AAA," and that was a good thing to hear. And I think we have a good case to make, and we made it, and I think it was well received. The only cloud on the horizon, of course, is not of our making, but it is the, quote, sequestration set of issues at the federal government level. I'm sorry. I should know how to do this by now, guys. So the sequestration issue at the federal level, one of the rating agencies, in particular Moody's, has made it clear that they will link counties that are dependent upon the federal government to whether or not sequestration actually happens, because sequestration will result in a significant reduction in federal funds flowing to particular communities. We have argued to Moody's that our community is no longer as dependent as many communities are, that we are a far more diverse economy, and that we should not be linked to the travails of the federal government. We have asked for the opportunity to make that case to them again before they render any final decision with respect to that, if there is sequestration. Of course, we don't know if there will be sequestration. There are many people who believe that in a lame duck session of Congress, that Congress will find its way to avoiding this result. But even in the event that there was sequestration, our county is of the firm belief that our economic future is not dependent upon the federal government, and therefore we should not be downgraded from AAA because the federal government can't get its act together. Why don't I pause at that point and see what's on your mind, guys? Don't all jump at once.
You talked a lot about how getting additional transportation funding isn't really an option, yes or no, in terms of quality of life. It's something you have to have. Why should you or Montgomery County residents be any more confident that that money is going to materialize now from the state than it has in the past?
I don't know if we are. I do feel as though the state hasn't fully appreciated the economic consequences to the state of failing to do so. So while Garrett County may not have the same needs for investment in the Purple Line and the CCT and a rapid transit system, they do have a significant stake in the economic future of Montgomery County, because Montgomery County is the economic engine of the state of Maryland. And if we're not successful, if Prince George's County is not successful in its economic development opportunities, it's not as though people in Garrett County are not going to suffer the consequences. So we are ultimately in this together. But I would also say that if at the end of the day the state doesn't have the political will to do so, then they have to set our people free. They have to allow us to control our own destiny and to allow us to at least explore the option of coming up with regional solutions or local solutions that allow us to move forward with or without the state. Now, that's something that people are also of two minds with respect to, because it is a fundamental state responsibility, and why should local governments be assuming state responsibility? And I think that's true. On the other hand, I think no is not an answer. So again, we're in a world in which we only have, if you will, bad options, and to me the worst option is doing nothing. We cannot afford to do nothing, particularly given our competitive situation with Northern Virginia, which every day you see is doing something. And we can't do nothing.
What's the status of the Digital Innovation Officer? Have they started doing interviews? That's the position you...
I believe that they have done so, and I believe there are interviews, in fact, today.
So you expect someone to be hired by the end of this year?
Oh, yes. I expect somebody to be hired pretty quickly. My understanding is that there are 4 candidates that are being interviewed, and that they are whittling this down, and they're taking it seriously. They're pretty excited about it.
Can you talk about what you expect that person to do right away? I know this was your idea, wasn't it?
It was my idea in conjunction with Councilmember Reamer, who is head of digital government, and it's something that what we're trying to do, of course. It was in response to one of our Shaping the Future, Adapting to Change meetings in which Google and the funder of Twitter came and said what we need to see to attract new industry into Montgomery County to compete for the new economy, we need to see that this is a community that actually values innovation. And so that is the goal of this innovation officer, and also to engage the public in trying to figure out how we can be more innovative. The simple way of thinking about it, of course, is to look at phone apps and the development of apps like the city of Chicago has done and other communities have done, in which you take your data and you make that data available to the public, and then the public comes up with all these ways to use that data to create economic opportunities and to make life better for your community. So we have a treasure trove of data in our county, and it's how can we use that data in part, is how can we use that data to create economic opportunities for our people and make life better, and to show that we are a county, if you will, on the cutting edge of innovation. It is not something that our county has historically been thought of in those terms. And so this is a push to, if you will, rebrand our county so that it demonstrates this is who the new Montgomery County is.
Walter Reed is getting ready to present their new environmental impact study that for new buildings there on their campus. I mean, are you continuing to keep track of traffic-related issues down there in Wisconsin?
I promise you, insofar as I do represent that community, we monitor it pretty closely, and so it's one of the reasons I'm going there today, is to be part of this and to continue to see how we're doing and how are the improvements helping and what the situation is. But we hear from our constituents on a regular basis.
Have you had any reaction or response from the county attorney on public power?
Have not. And again, the goal with respect to that is just to see whether or not his conclusion that we had to go to the state legislature is correct. In part because with some further analysis, it was clear that Pepco itself purchased this franchise from another utility. And so then, and it didn't have to go to the state legislature in order to purchase it. So if Pepco could purchase it like a commodity on the open market, it just wasn't clear to me that the state legislature has to approve public power. So I just wanted him to, in light of that information, had he taken that into account, to reassess it. But one of the things, I spoke with the governor yesterday, and as you know, the governor had created a task force to give him recommendations on how to proceed in light of the lack of reliability. And he had been gracious enough, and his people were gracious enough to invite me to testify at the first meeting of their task force. And at that time, I presented my proposal that they have Montgomery County serve as a model for what I'm calling Utility 2.0, which is the utility of the future, the utility of the 21st century. And so I shared that again with the governor yesterday, and that will be a focus of a committee meeting in which we will have, in which we'll bring the experts on Utility 2.0 before our council, in which they will share with our community what would the Utility 2.0 look like and how would it serve our community better. And so I'm hoping that the governor will include that in his forward thinking about this set of issues.
And you had a work session last week with WSSC. Did you learn anything, or do you think there's anything the public should know that's important about that work session?
I did think it's something, and again, all things are Pepco appears. We had an interesting exchange with WSSC, with our county, and with Pepco itself. What we hadn't appreciated was that part of the problem that happened with this Potomac plant almost being without power for too long. So we were hours away from losing water in our county in that storm. And if you lose power in that storm, if you lose water, you lose the ability to have public safety. You lose the ability to put out a fire. And that simply cannot happen. So that was the reason why we had the meeting, is to say, okay, folks, this facility is way too important. Why were you on the edge here? What have you done? What are you thinking about? And WSSC is exploring putting on an on-site generator to maintain power, but that's pretty expensive. They had the conversation with Pepco, in which we said to Pepco, is this facility, in your judgment as an engineer, does it need more redundancy? And they said, yes, it does. And so then we said, okay, well, what are the options? And the options really were two options. There was the on-site generator, which would require what's a 10 megawatt facility, which is a big generation facility to put on site, or undergrounding. And so I said to Pepco, okay, your job is to provide reliable power. That is your job. And here's a facility that absolutely has to have reliable power. I think undergrounding is something that you seriously have to explore. And so the WSSC, Jerry Johnson, came up to me afterwards and said how grateful he was that I got that on the record, that this is something that could work. It would not work, of course, in the case of a blackout, but in terms of the weather-related sets of issues that we have, it most certainly would work, and my expectation is that that will be something that will be seriously explored, because we cannot allow to have facilities of this nature to be without power.
You talked about the meeting with Fairfax County, the American Legion Bridge traffic issues, I think you said 2 months ago. Can you provide specifics in terms of any kinds of movement and in terms of the actual solution since that meeting? I mean, what?
Well, the letter itself was the outcome of that.
Right, but, so we're talking and just because I haven't been following it
Sure.
closely, is essentially we're just waiting for the funding materialize and you're going from there, or where are we at right now?
Okay. First of all, recognize that, again, Montgomery County and Fairfax had literally never sat down together. So we did that for the first time to see whether or not we could, A, do this, and B, could we do it in a way that would have us work together.
Right.
So we sort of looked around the room and we sort of surprised ourselves that this isn't that hard, folks. If we can talk together, we can work together, we can compete for new business, but we can actually work together. So in that meeting, we sort of talked about the American Legion Bridge, because that is the issue that really is first and foremost between us. And we kicked around some ideas, and we directed our staffs to continue to work on whether or not we could come up with an interim solution. And so our staffs did, and we came up with this interim solution that both Fairfax and Montgomery County said, yeah, let's put this to our state leaders. So we have put a proposal, it's not about funding, it is literally about restriping, it is about something that they haven't felt comfortable doing yet, which is using the shoulder for traffic, okay? And so that is where it stands. We have put this before the state highway leaders and said, we need you to look at this. We need you to understand that by the end of the year, Virginia will have these HOT lanes, and the traffic at the bridge is only going to get worse unless you do something quickly. So that's where it stands. No, we sent this last week. The letter. Yeah, I apologize. So we sent the letter last week, and we just haven't had a chance to talk about it here. Oh, yeah.
I think so.
We have copies of it right here.
Okay, great, thanks.
Well,
Great. And second thing, you said you're surprised that the county hasn't worked with Fairfax more in the past. Is this kind of the saying that you're doing this now? Would you anticipate this is something you're gonna do more? Is this something and is there an area that you think you should talk to about the next that would be most pressing in your mind?
The answer is yes, that I personally am someone who believes that we need to be very mindful of our regional opportunities and regional solutions. So Fairfax is one of our regional partners, if you will, and Prince George's County is as well. And so we held the first joint transportation committee meeting with Prince George's County earlier this year as well, for that same reason. So we need to have our neighboring jurisdictions, we need to be aligned with them, and they need to be aligned with us, and we need to be working together for solutions. in part because so far our states, respective states, have not come forward with their solutions that are satisfactory. So we need to be looking at more locally generated solutions. And that means working together, even as we compete.
Have you heard back, or are you planning on having any dialogue with NIH regarding the superbug? I know you brought that up.
Yes.
a week back.
Yes, I've got a letter to share with you that our county executive and I sent to NIH. I've been having ongoing conversations with NIH, and I must say that NIH has been very forthcoming in saying that they would be more than happy to sit down with our county and work out, if possible, a memorandum of understanding so that we have the kinds of communications that are appropriate when bad things happen. So they have made it clear they're prepared to sit down. We have invited them to sit down, and we are beginning staff conversations now at the staff level, and then we will have, if you will, a high-level meeting with the county executive, myself, and the head of NIH, and Dr. Gallen. So I feel like they've been very responsive, and we have now formally invited them to the table. We will be sitting down. Of course, the state needs to be a partner at that meeting as well. So my expectation is that we will have NIH, the state, and our county sitting down and exploring what is appropriate in these kinds of situations.
And just, if you could broadly outline me what you're looking for, sort of communication.
Well, basically what I am looking for is a memorandum of understanding that would make it clear that in what circumstances does NIH have an obligation to inform Montgomery County of something taking place in its clinic that may have consequences for the broader community. So I have no desire to, A, step on their toes on the incredible work that they do, and get involved in things that are totally internal to their operation. But at a point in time, if they were to conclude that, you know, we really don't have a handle on this particular situation and there's a possibility that the broader community could be affected, then absolutely we need to know about it, and we need to have something in place that makes it clear with respect to that. So we're trying to be both respectful of the extraordinary work that NIH does and the extraordinary role it plays in our community, and responsible to our obligations to safeguard our community. Victor.
Speaking of MOUs, what's the latest on the county's MOU with Pepco on trees?
That's on me. We just simply haven't set up that meeting yet. All the parties have agreed, but just in the press of stuff, I just haven't pulled the trigger on pulling that meeting together.
You
But
expect to schedule it
I do.
when?
Yeah, you know, I'm not trying to put you off. I just haven't had a chance to sit down and get it done. But there hasn't been resistance. The chairman of the commission has said they're willing to do it. Mr. Graham, president of Pepco, has said they're willing to do it. Commissioner Nazarian, yes, Chairman Nazarian.
And on the note of, I guess a couple of weeks ago now, or a couple of weeks ago, Fairfax sort of secured some funding, Fairfax officials sort of secured some funding in case sequestration sort of hits their area. What is Montgomery's sort of plan for doing sequestration?
Well, you were a little tardy, Victor, in which we talked about our trip to New York City and the bond rating agency, and I talked about it in that context, in which I quite frankly don't believe that we are as vulnerable as Fairfax, for example, is to sequestration. Fairfax is far more dependent, for example, on the defense industry than Montgomery County is, and half of the budget cuts that are contemplated by sequestration are directed at defense. And so it is clear that Fairfax has much more concerns with sequestration than we do. I believe our economy is far more diversified, and part of the conversation we had with our bond rating agencies was to establish that. We think we have a conservative budget going forward, and we think we can handle sequestration if in fact that happens. But we'll look at it when it happens, and we will adjust as necessary if it happens.
Two quick questions on that. What did the bond agency say in response to? Did they agree with the assessment that you guys were not as sort of that you guys didn't have to sort of necessarily secure money for sequestration? And B, actually let's start with A.
The bond rating agencies themselves are split on this issue. So, for example, Fitch said to us, you know, we think you guys can handle this, and we'll look at it when it comes, and we'll sit down with you, et cetera, and they think we're AAA, et cetera. Moody's has taken a different, if you will, doctrinaire position. They've taken the position that there are communities that are indirectly linked to the federal government, and therefore if they downgrade the federal government, they will consider downgrading local governments. That's why we're on a negative watch with Moody's. And we made the rather impassioned pitch to Moody's that A, we'd like to see what your criteria is, and B, we'd like to have the opportunity to sit down with you and explain why we do not believe we are in a position like other communities, that we believe that our economy is far more diversified, that we are strong, et cetera, and that whatever happens with the federal government should not result in an automatic downgrading of Montgomery County. So we've made that argument to them, and we hope we will have that opportunity to sit down with them. They expressed some willingness to do so.
And B, have you guys made an attempt to sort of quantify the effect of sequestration on Montgomery County? I know you said that relative to Fairfax would be much better for Montgomery. I don't know if you have an absolute value kind of for that.
Well, no, and I guess, again, I personally believe that in a lame duck session, we're going to get past sequestration. So to spend a whole lot of energy on something that we don't even know if it's going to occur or how it will occur and how it would play out among various agencies, you know, we feel like we have time to address this and that we have put forth our budget in a manner that is conservative enough that we can absorb what would happen. It will be on the margin and something manageable from our perspective. That's what we believe.
Just out of curiosity, do you have any kind of ballpark figure for what percentage of the county workforce is actually, you know, dependent on the? I mean, you said that you think you're better off in Fairfax. Obviously, there's not as much of a military presence, but when people think of this region, that's the first thing they think about in terms of a major employer. Have you seen a shift in terms of the number of people who are dependent on the federal government for a paycheck?
I know we have those numbers, and I apologize. Those aren't numbers that I have in my mind in the moment. It's a fair question. I just don't have.
You don't know what?
Oh, I would think our Department of Finance. Yeah. Anything else, gang? Did we do it?
One more.
Oh, yeah.
What's the latest on Ride-On, and what's the latest on the police cars? So the recall, the police cars on Ride-On in terms of the mechanical problems that happen to those Ride-Ons, that Ride-On type, I forgot the name right now. What's the latest on those two vehicles?
Well, we took those vehicles out, right? So.
Right, and you guys, I know you and the county executive were committed, or not committed, but were interested in sort of pursuing some sort of legal action.
Yes, I have not been advised by our county attorneys as to their thoughts with respect to that. I personally believe that we ought to be aggressive in pursuing it and have offered my view with respect to that. But I don't think we're at a place where we have pulled the trigger or made a decision on that issue. And I don't have anything new on the police issue, on the police cars. All right. Thank you, guys.